and then we will continue our worship. Thank you, Lynn. Are there announcements to be made this morning?
Yeah. We have USFW this Wednesday, don't we?
Yes.
I had put on the notice for some of you that the cemetery board would be meeting on the 12th, but that meeting has been changed to the 26th of April. Just so you know that I think Lynn and Steve are planning to go to that meeting, and things are moving along with getting the approval for our West Newton monument.
Joys and concerns?
Well, Thelma and Louise took a trip to Avon, and I got to watch my grandson perform, and that his drum unit moves on now to state, so we will be making a trip to Terre Haute next week.
When did you go, the 19th?
The 31st.
Nancy goes to IU West on the 31st to decide what to do about a hiatal hernia.
Well, I had a lovely trip to Northern California last week to visit a dear friend. And one of the highlights was to attend a worship group at a place called Friends House, which is a Quaker retirement center out there. And the worship group is sponsored by Redwood Forest Friends Meeting, and the worship group had 30 people there, which is larger than Redwood Forest. So it was a lovely time, and one of the people I got to visit with for a short time named David Hartsoe, and he was a longtime activist in the San Francisco area for peace and justice. And we had a nice little visit, and he made some announcements about peace and social concerns things during the after worship. Well, this morning when I was checking my email, I subscribed to a thing called the Daily Quaker Message. And it was a story by David Hartsoe, who said, was talking about his first sit in, and that would have been back in the 60s. And he says, towards the end of it, he said, toward the end of a second day, I heard a guy come up from behind me. And he said, if you don't get out of this store in 2 seconds, I'm going to stab this through your heart. I looked him in the eyes, and his eyes were filled with hatred. And in his hand was a switchblade. I had 2 seconds to decide what to do. Do I really believe in nonviolence? Or is there some other way to deal with this guy? I just looked at him in the face and said, friend, do what you believe is right, but I'll still try to love you. It was absolutely amazing. His face that was contorted with hatred, his jaw began to drop, and his hand with the switchblade began to fall, and he left the store. And something in the way I responded had touched his humanity. I thought that was a powerful story. And when I posted it on Facebook, I tagged David in it because he's one of my friends on Facebook. And up popped that he died yesterday morning. He was 86. And so a life well lived, and a life that was lived in deep witness. So I'm sad and touched by remembering him this morning from that visit. I'm glad I had a chance to see him before he was gone. Now, Chip is our worship leader this morning, so we will enter silence if you can mute your phones, just for feedback purposes and that sort of thing. And we will, Chip will speak out of the worship as he feels led.
Good morning, friends. Thank you, Lynn. If you know the hymn Lynn played, then you know the subject of my message today. Now, I usually ask to do my message on the last Sunday of the month. That gives me plenty of time to think about what I'm going to talk about and get my message written down, run it by Troy. He makes changes, and I rewrite and do several read-through, and then I'm ready to go. This month, Norma asked me to change, and I agreed. No problem, except I couldn't remember the date. Now, I thought I was doing my message last Sunday where there was no music. And of course, I thought of this was my chance to take Jonathan at his word and sing. With so much crazy and bad stuff going on in the world right now, I wanted to do an uplifting message. So for a short time, we could forget our troubles, come on and get happy, get ready to chase our cares away. Don't worry, Brent. I'm not doing my Judy Garland impression. What I'm going to do is revisit Noah. The scripture for today comes from Genesis 6:9 through 9:17, and it's from the New International Version of the Bible. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. He walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their way. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make the roof of it, leaving the roof opening at an opening of 1 cubit high. Put a door in the side and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring flood waters onto the earth to destroy all life under heavens. Every creature that has breath in it and everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You're going to bring into the ark 2 of every living creature, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come with you and be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that has been eaten and store it away for food for you and them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, male and its mate. And also several pairs of birds of every kind, male and female, to keep these varieties kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his son's wife entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, and of all creatures that moved along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the flood waters came to the earth. Now, with your indulgence, and my apologies to Tennessee Ernie Ford, well, the Lord came down to look around the spell, and there was Mr. Noah behaving mighty well. That's the reason the scriptures record Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. The Lord said, "Noah, there's going to be a flood. There's going to be some water. There's going to be some mud. So take off your hat, Noah. Take off your coat. Get ham, shem, and J-Path and build yourself a boat." Noah said, "Lord, I don't believe I could." The Lord said, "Noah, get some sturdy gopher wood. Never know what you could do till you try. Build it 50 cubits long and 30 cubits high." Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Noah said, "There she is, Lord." The Lord said, "Noah, it's time to get aboard. Take a creature, a he and a she, and of course, Mrs. Noah and the whole family." Noah said, "Lord, it's getting mighty dark." The Lord said, "Noah, get them creatures in the ark." Noah said, "Lord, it's beginning to pour." The Lord said, "Noah, hurry up and shut the door." Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Well, after 40 days on the foot of the deep, old Mr. Noah, he took a peek and said, "We're not moving, Lord. Where are we at?" The Lord said, "You're sitting right on Mount Ararat." Noah said, "Lord, it's getting mighty dry." The Lord said, "Noah, see my rainbow in the sky? Take all your creatures and people to earth. Don't be more trouble than you're worth." Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and he landed high and dry. Okay. I know it's a little like comparing apples and oranges, but I want to tell you the story of Noah from my point of view, as if I were in Noah's shoes or sandals, as the case might be. The story of Noah and the ark was always my favorite Bible story. I admired Noah. He was so good, and God trusted him to keep his family and the animals safe. I always thought how fun it would be to be around all those animals. I guess I thought it was going to be like a floating zoo. It never dawned on me how much work that would be involved. There's going to be a flood. The first thing that comes to mind is God telling me about the flood and how to get ready for it. Now, some accounts say Noah had a dream and God told him his plans. Well, my family would never believe me if I told them my dream and what had happened. You see, I'm on sleep aids and they make me have really vivid dreams, so that would never float. So God would have to talk to me like he did in the film, The Bible in the Beginning. And he would have to have a loud, strong voice like in the film, like either Charlton Heston or Richard Burton. And he couldn't just say, hello, I got good news and I got some bad news. And I'd have to have him say it again because I'd have to record it on my cell phone because my family still wouldn't believe me. Build yourself a boat. The ark's dimension were 30 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, and that could accommodate a range of animals along with water and food storage. At approximately 110 feet long, it would take nearly 1.5 football fields to equal the ark's length. The roof of Noah's Ark was more than 50 feet from the ground, higher than a modern 44-story building. That's plenty of space for the extra tall inner decks as the Bible describes. We were going to need help building the boat. It's a big boat. It's a really big boat. And I think that the 5 of us could not build one. So I'd have to ask for help. It's time to get aboard. Get those creatures in the ark. Now, studies from organizations such as Answers in Genesis suggest that there could have been about 7,000 animals on the ark. I couldn't find how the animals and birds showed up. In the movie, The Bible in the Beginning shows Noah playing a flute, and the animals just followed him into the ark. Now, I can tell you I have lots of animals around our property. We have deer, squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, ducks, a fox named George, a hawk named Decatur, 2 groundhogs, and of course, dogs and cats. But, oh, and lots of raccoons. But our dogs and cats have all been sick, so I guess I'd have to pick some up along the way. Now, I could send Drake to the zoo and see if playing his saxophone might bring the more exotic animals to the ark. Of course, I'm sure that will cause some confusion on Washington Street. And of course, Mrs. Noah and the whole family. Now, Brent and I were having lunch the other day, and I told him my plan to talk about today. And he brought up a point. Did Noah have grandchildren? What it says, when it says bring your wife and son's wives, did they have children? Well, we're all descendants of Noah, so we're products of first cousins marrying each other. And you know that never works out well. So I'm hearing God say, bring your family on board. Well, my immediately family is Brandon, Keisha, Troy, and my favorite grandson, Drake. But I have a much bigger family that I love, and I wouldn't want to leave them to drown. I would have to bring favorite cousin Brent and his 2 sons and 3 daughters and their family, and that's just the Piersons. Then there are friends like in this meeting, other friends like William, Thelma, Pat, Russ, Judy, Donna, and Jeff, and their families would have to come. And then there's my mother's side of the family. Well, like they said in the movie Jaws, I think we're going to need a bigger boat. And if I was in charge of the ark, I'm so afraid it would end up to be like the trip to the SS Minnow. So I'm hearing it's getting dark, so get in the ark and shut the door. How long was Noah in the ark during the flood? Well, I've asked people that, and they say 40 days and 40 nights, just like in the song. But that answer is not correct. What happened for 40 days and 40 nights was it rained. Noah was on the ark for over a year. Many scholars believe that the flood lasted 370 or 371 days. Now, I don't know how they figured that out, but then again, I'm not a scholar. Now, God told Noah to board the ark 1 week before the flood starts, which means he would have been on board for 377 or 378 days. That also means that he only had 1 week to get his family and the animals and his stuff on the ark before it started to rain. Now, that's not much time to pack, but I'm sure Noah didn't have all the stuff that I had. So with all those animals and birds on the ark, with only windows at the top, how bad could it smell? And with those birds flying around, you would never know when you were going to take one on the top of the head. And then you get to have all the mess to clean up. And where would you put it? It rained for 40 days, so you would have a huge pile of stuff just from the get-go. And when would you would be so busy feeding, milking, gathering eggs, and so on, then when would you be able to sleep? And how could you sleep with all the noise? See my rainbow in the sky? Well, Noah and his family and all the animals survived the trip, and God made a covenant with Noah that he would never flood the entire earth again. We only have to look up and see the rainbow after a storm to be reminded of that. After the flood, Noah began to farm the land by planting a vineyard. Now, to make a long story short, he drank too much wine and ran around naked. That really angered God, to say the least. Now, I often hear if Noah had been a truly wise man, he would have not brought mosquitoes with him. Now, I say, if he was truly a wise man, he would have brought wine with him. Being a wet Quaker, I know I would have. I would have needed it. So what is the moral of the story? Well, for me, it's when you are asked to have or do a task that you may feel is overwhelming, trust God. The ark wasn't built in a day, so it may take several days or years. Just stick with it and get it done. I'll report back and see if that works on my decluttering the house. Just remember, trust God with the impossible. Trust God with the impossible, as you may be asked to do some things you think sounds crazy. With things so crazy in the world today, I would like to close with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. God, grant that this tragic midnight of man's inhumanity to man will soon pass, and the bright daybreak of freedom and brotherhood will come into being. May the light of God surround you. May the love of God enfold you. May the power of God protect you. And may the presence of God watch over you. For wherever you are, God is.
Thank you, Chip and Lynn, for your ministries. We'll continue with worship, and we will bid God's blessing on those who need to leave at this time, and let's continue to center and listen for God's voice.
Thank you, Chip. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you, Chip.
Like Chip, I guess I, even as a kid through today, I've been fascinated by the story of Noah and the great flood. As a kid, I just thought it was a really cool story about all the animals and everything. As I got a little bit older, I started also thinking about the tragic part of it. You know, this little family survives and everybody else is wiped out. It's kind of a reverse Titanic. The ship survives with a few people and everybody else dies. And that has troubled me, and it still does in some ways. But in Old Testament studies, both at the Lutheran Seminary and then at Earlham School of Religion, of course, I learned that there are lots of Middle Eastern flood stories and accounts. But then this week, this past week, watching National Geographic's, one of the archaeologists was doing unearthing origins of flood stories, and he was in Peru. And he remarked that there are the flood stories are universal and all from about the same time. And like I said, I realized they were geographically centered in the Mideast. But I was kind of overwhelmed by the idea that in a civilization or a time where civilization did not communicate with each other about events, that all these stories developed around the same time. And it just moved me in a way that I can't quite describe. To think that the flood and the survivors and all these stories see the divine hand in it. And that took me out of my little world in a way I needed to be taken out of. So thank you, Chip, for bringing Noah and his wife and his sons' wives all up for us to ponder.
Chip, I appreciate the reminder that when the world seems to be falling apart, God is still in charge. And that when God's timing is right, all will be well. I needed to hear that today. Thank you.
Around 2008, when I was working for Friends United Meeting, I had the privilege of being taken to an old man who remembered the first missionaries and when they came in Kenya. The man who took us, it was Josephat. He was the bursar for the Friends Theological College. And his grandfather was in his 90s, which is very unusual for a Kenyan man to live that long. But when he had a chance to just tell us his stories, he told us he remembered when the first missionaries came, and the stories that they told and read from the Bible had to be interpreted by his own people. And sometimes he said, we got it wrong. We didn't read the Bible for ourselves because we didn't know how to read. So we just learned it from the way people talked about it. And sometimes we heard it to second, third hand, fourth hand. And he said, we didn't have the privilege of having the schools and the academic learning and the generations of people teaching their new generations that you have as white people from America. But he said, one of the things that we learned from the story of Noah was that he had 3 sons, and one son had a darker complexion than the other sons, and he was later condemned. And I don't remember the story well enough to say why. But he said, we grew up after that knowing that the Africans were Black because they were condemned. He said, we just believed that all the time I was growing up, all the time I was a father, all the time until lately, he said, because the Friends established schools and the Friends established healthcare and the Friends did all these things to make our lives well established, and we could be aware of more of the things that are the truth. He said, we believed we were condemned. So I think of that story when I think of the Noah story, of saying, how much do we teach that people misunderstand the truth in it? So reminded me again of the work we have to do and the passion and the compassion we need to have for those people who are new in a life of faith, at least our interpretation of the life in faith. Sometimes they get it more right than we do, but we do sometimes create misunderstanding in truth when we teach others when they don't know how to find it for themselves.
This story as a child is very fascinating. Your imagination can go so many different directions. But as an adult, we start thinking about how could this be done? It's not like you had an Ace Hardware down the street. It's not like they even knew what a nail was. And then you think about the wood, the small forest they had to do to build that boat. And then the time. And then the time to find the animals to put on that boat. And you start breaking this story down to a point where it's just impossible. But Chip just reminded me the story is about being overwhelmed. Noah had to be very overwhelmed. And the trust and passion to do things that are overwhelming. So I thank you, Chip. I see the passion in this story, and I saw the passion in your singing. And I very much appreciate the reminder that don't let your passion down.
Are all hearts clear?
Mine is.
As I was sitting here reflecting on messages offered, the phrase kept coming to me: when it rains, God still reigns. But then I changed it a bit in my head to when it rains, still God reigns, because I wanted both the yet of God still, but also God seems still sometimes. The silent God still reigns. Perhaps we don't hear the voice, maybe because we're not listening, but still God reigns. And a message in the chat from Steve and Catherine says, let love reign. Well, it's good to see everyone. Blessings on the week ahead. And it's starting to drizzle here, so I hope that's not a sign.
It's love.
Oh, good. We'll take it that way. Thank you, Steve.
What
Thank
time
you,
am I
Chip.
reading?
That was very good.
Thank you. What time
Thanks,
am I
Chip.
reading you
Thanks,
guys?
Chip.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.